we are probably going to have a very small audience here, but you'll have a big audience online. Is there people with the snow, and some people may be just going home after service to watch it on live stream. So, can you hear me?
Yes.
I just want you to know that while it looks like a small interest here, I want to guarantee you that there's a larger interest that will be watching virtually.
Yeah. Now, Diane, this time, don't put a bag over the owl. Okay? Don't put a bag over the owl, so that Mark can't see how many people are here.
Oh.
Just kidding. Just kidding. The faithful showed up.
Yes, the faithful showed up for sure. So why don't we go ahead and get started, and as others come in, they can join us. So today's the third session of our immigration, sponsored by the Adult Formation Committee and the Mission and Social Justice Committees. To assess your interest, we have a form that we'd like you to fill out because we're interested in whether or not you'd be interested in any more sessions on immigration. So I'll pass that around in a minute. But today, we are fortunate to have Mark Adams, who is the U.S. coordinator for Frontero de Cristo, a nonprofit organization supporting migrants along the Arizona border. And he will join us via Zoom, as he is right now, from the Borderlands to share stories of migrants and the profound impact of border experiences on individuals and their families. Formerly a commissioned ministry of the PCUSA, Frontero de Cristo continues its vital work as an independent nonprofit offering accompaniment, advocacy, and practical support to immigrant communities. The relationship changed when PCUSA did some changes on their mission program. So the Frontero de Cristo isn't totally tied as closely to PCUSA as it had been. Mark Adams is a native of Clover, South Carolina, a graduate of Columbia Theological Seminary in Decatur, Georgia, and was ordained to the Presbyterian Church USA in 1998. Since that time, Mark has served in Agua Prieta, and I'm not sure if I'm saying that right or not, Sonora and Douglas, Arizona, as U.S. coordinator of a binational ministry, Frontero de Cristo. Frontero de Cristo cultivates relationships and understandings across borders, responds in faith to the realities of immigration, and respond in faith to the drug culture. FDC serves people throughout a variety of partner ministries, including migrant shelters, after-school centers, community gardens, a cooperative fair trade plus coffee business, rehabilitation facilities, and more. Mark is married to Miriam Maladano Escobar, and they have 3 children. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to you, Mark.
All right. Good morning, everyone. It's good to be with you here virtually. It's really cold outside here. We haven't even got up to 50 degrees yet here.
Oh, poor baby.
Oh, poor baby. We have our sympathy.
So no, I am thinking very much about folks who are struggling with the cold, and I didn't expect many people to be present there in person today, but also grateful for all those who are showing up, even in the cold, to seek to witness to what we want to see in our nation as being a more welcoming place, even as it seems as our federal government seems to continue closing doors. People are showing up in the streets and saying, no, we want to accompany our immigrant neighbors and be present with them, even in the cold and even in difficult circumstances. And so I'm mindful of that this morning. Just wanted to check, Brent, are y'all going to run the slideshow from there, or do I share screen here?
Share.
Which is easier, Bill? For him to share it on the
Yes.
screen?
Yes.
Okay, for you
Please.
to share it on the
Please,
Okay.
please do.
Okay, very good. All right, I'm gonna let's see. Let's see. Okay. All right. So, as Diane mentioned, Frontero de Cristo is a binational ministry located here in Sonora, Douglas, Arizona. It was founded in 1984. Really not as a ministry to grapple with realities of immigration, but rather to grapple with how churches can be in ministry together. There's a legacy of more colonial mission that had led the Mexican Presbyterian Church to ask all Presbyterian missionaries to leave Mexico in 1972, and created a moratorium and of 10 years of work together. And in 1984, the vision of one of the leaders in Mexico, Saul Tijerina, was to create binational ministries along the border, not where one church was doing ministry to another, but where the border would be a place of encounter of our churches coming together to discern how is God calling us to be in ministry together on our common border, to share our human resources, to share our gifts, to share our time, and to discern what is it that God is calling us to do together in ministry here on our common border. And so for the last 41 years, Frontero de Cristo has been one of those ministries that has been grappling with that question. And over time, we've kind of discerned three broad goals that Diane mentioned. One is the center part of it is to cultivate relationships and understanding across borders, creating community here on the U.S.-Mexico border, as well as inviting a broader community of folks from both the U.S. and Mexico to enter into this space together in this relationship of common ministry and common life. The second being responding in faith to the realities of migration. The Agua Prieta became the primary crossing point for folks entering the U.S. without documentation back in the late 1990s. And the question became, how do we respond in faith to this reality and not fear? And then the third main goal is to respond in faith to the realities of the drug culture, and realizing that younger and younger people are being targeted not just for the consumption of drugs, but also in the trafficking of drugs. And so, what is our response as a ministry? And once again, in faith and not fear to these real challenges that exist here. So today we're going to focus mainly on the immigration piece, and so we'll let's see how I'll do this. 1 second, sorry. And this particular image that you're seeing here on your screen, I'm not sure what. I apologize. Oh, I know what I did. I'm out of practice. I'm sorry. Not there. Okay, sorry. Are you seeing that on your screen?
Yes.
Okay, so this is one view from the border, and I want to begin with thinking about this part of God's creation and how we define this part of God's creation. And this is one of the responses in terms of our definition of this particular space over the last years. And so what I'd like you to share with me is what you see in this view of the border. Can you say it a little louder?
A big divide.
Okay, a big divide. What else? What else do you notice about this big divide?
People looking through it.
Okay, there's people who are looking through the big divide.
Looks like only people on one side.
It looks like people only on one side.
Electrified wire.
Okay, you see concertina wire. It's not electrified, but it is concertina wire on the other side.
Oh, okay. This on the danger.
Okay, I heard someone say they see a danger sign, and if you got magnifying glass, you could actually see it says "Danger, do not enter." Peligro no entre. How many danger signs are there in this image?
One.
One.
Okay, it looks like one.
Maybe
but
one.
if you go on the other
all the way
side,
down.
if you go on the other side, there's actually one on the other side as well. So whether you're in the north looking south or the south looking north, this is what you see: danger, do not enter, peligro no entre. And it's not just these two right here, but you also see another one right there and another one right there. And so all along the U.S.-Mexico border, where we've created this divide, we have put these danger signs. Danger, do not enter. Peligro, no entre. Whether you're north looking south or south looking north. I want to give us one more view of the U.S.-Mexico border. This is another view of the U.S.-Mexico border. What do you notice here?
They're facing away from the divide.
Okay, facing away from the divide.
More wire.
An enormous amount.
Yeah, you could. In this particular part of God's creation, where we've put this divide, there's actually 4 strands of concertina wire, as opposed to the other place where there were 2 that were on the other side of the border. So yes, that's another difference. So a real quick question: Would you think that here, if we were looking at these young folks, if we were looking toward them and through that divide, are we standing in the north looking south or the south looking north?
South looking north.
South looking north. All right. And so, how about in the previous picture? Do you think we're in the north looking south or the south looking north?
South.
Yeah. So this is the south looking north. We're in Mexico here, looking north, and we see danger, do not enter. And then we come to the north side, so we're north looking south here. And so this is how we as a nation have defined this part of God's creation over the last 35 years. There was actually no steel barrier here until 1997. So it's been about 29 years since we put up the first steel barrier, which was very different than this one. But over the years, we've continued to fortify and militarize this particular part of God's creation, and making the statement, danger, do not enter. And so this is where the context of our ministry of Frontero de Cristo is in a place where our government is telling us it's dangerous to go south and it's dangerous to go north. and yet we're called by God to bring together people from both sides of the border to be the body of Christ together in this place, coming from the south, from the north, from the east, and the west, to form a witness to who God is calling us to be, a common humanity seeking the welfare of our communities on both sides of the border. And as I mentioned earlier, it's really kind of a core piece of our ministry is building relationships, understanding across borders, is bringing together people who just don't belong together in the world's eyes. People who are rich and poor, people who are conservative and progressive, people who are, have different political affiliations, different theological affiliations. While we're Presbyterian, and there are Presbyterians in Mexico and Presbyterians in the U.S., we have very different understandings of a lot of things in terms of time, in terms of how long worship should be, how long a sermon should be, how to pass out papers, some very practical things, but also some theological differences that are key. But not only that, we're beyond just Presbyterian. We work together with the multiple faith traditions as well as non-faith traditions who want to work for the welfare of the city. So bringing together folks who perhaps, quote, shouldn't be together, but who God is calling to form as a holy dwelling in which God dwells by God's Spirit in this place. And out of that is where we seek to respond in faith to the realities of migration. We do that in basically 5 ways, broad ways. We do it through prayer. This is a prayer that we did joining with people all along the border back in 2021 when we were praying that the wall would stop, that no more wall would be built. And this is 35 miles outside of Douglas, Arizona. You can actually see these are the Peloncillo Mountains, and where you can see the gash that we made as a nation in these mountains. We made a 100-foot gash in the mountains to put a 30-foot wall at the base of that cliff, basically, that we created in the mountains. That's the absurdity of what we were doing. And so we joined together as a witness and to pray that we would not expend so much natural resources and energy and money to destroy God's creation, and also focus on more positive ways of dealing with real challenges. Every Tuesday at 5:15, we have the Healing Our Borders prayer vigil. It's a vigil that happens right at the U.S.-Mexico border. We start five blocks north and we process toward Mexico, and we call out the names of those folks who have died crossing the border in Cochise County over the years. This has been happening since December 12th of 2000. A couple of weeks ago, we commemorated the 1,300th consecutive prayer vigil, in which we remember those folks who have died, pray for their families, we pray for our governments that we might find a better way, and we pray for ourselves that we might work to end death in the desert, and that we might work for a more just and more peace-filled and more loving world. Each of the crosses has a name of someone who has died in the county. Each name is called out, and as we join together and say presente, calling into presence in our lives and in the life of the community, their names. And then at the end of the vigil, we gather and we remember 3 specific persons who have died, and we have a special time of reflection for them. And the last person that we call out is a person whose name is not known. And one of the most important pieces of the liturgy for me is at the very end, whoever's leading it calls out no identificado, not identified, presente. The children presente, the men presente, the women presente, and then Jesus Christ presente, Jesucristo presente to the 4 directions, and puts the cross in the middle of the other 2 as a reminder that in the midst of the suffering of this world, Jesus enters fully into it and is present in that suffering as well. So the Healing Our Borders prayer vigil happens every Tuesday. During the pandemic, we went hybrid. So if anybody would like to join the prayer vigil one Tuesday at 5:15, you're welcome to join virtually as well. And then one other prayer piece that we do is the Pilgrims of Remembrance. A group of School Sisters of Notre Dame, a Catholic order, had begun going to places where people had died and put larger crosses and have specific memorials in those parts of God's creation where they died. I want to just mention one in particular. This cross right here is of Juan Diego Trejo. And I was serving at the Migrant Resource Center in Agua Prieta when a gentleman came in 2022, and he said that there was a person in 2022, when there was a person in distress in the desert, and he called it a muchacho. He said, el muchacho está con problemas en el desierto, and he said that he was needed help. And so I immediately called 911 in the U.S. and let them know that, and he knew exactly where he was. He was 200 meters south of mile marker 384 on Highway 80. And so I called, and the dispatcher answered, and I explained who I was, explained I got this report that there was a young man that was in distress 200 meters south of mile marker 384 on Highway 80 and needed help. And what do you think the first question that the dispatcher asked me was? If you were a dispatcher, what would a question, if I shared that information, what would a question be that you asked?
Is he a citizen Mexican?
Say that again?
Is the person Mexican?
Well, that wouldn't have been my first question, but it was even, her question was, is he illegal? And I said, ma'am, I don't know what his immigration status is. I just know he's a human being who is in distress and needs help. And the phone hung up. I called back at thinking that it was, that there must have been a kind of drop connection, because I was calling from Mexico to the 911 in the U.S., and so maybe the signal dropped. She answered, and I said, hey, this is Mark. I said, I just wanted to follow up. And she goes, do you have any other information? I said, yes, he's having seizures. And then her second question to me after that was, does he have a car? And I said no, and hung up. And so then I called the Border Patrol because they have what's called BORSTAR, Border Rescue Team. So I called them and I let them know what was going on at the Douglas station. And they said, yes, we got a call from Douglas Dispatch about the situation. We let them know that we don't have enough resources right now to respond, and they need to send an ambulance. Okay, so I call back to the 911, and the dispatcher answers, same one, and I say who I am, and I said, I'm following up to see what you've done. What's the action you've done? And he goes, oh yes, we've taken care of it. We've called the Border Patrol. And I said, I know you did. I talked to the Border Patrol. They said that you needed to send an ambulance. So all of this happened, and I was thinking, then nobody was going to respond. So I ended up going across the border, going out to mile marker 384, and it was about 2 hours after the initial piece, and there were emergency vehicles there by then. So I went back, but unfortunately the next day the Border Patrol called me and let me know that the young man died. He had been bitten by a rattlesnake and had seizures, and he died on the way to the hospital. And his name was Juan Diego Trejo, and he was 16 years old. And my son, Nathan, made the cross for him. You see him in the picture here. And that's might not be the exact spot where he died, but very, very close to the space he died. And just remembering that Juan Diego Trejo was created in the divine image, beloved by God, and just remembering that we shouldn't demonize, dehumanize any human being that's created in the image of God. And unfortunately, that's what we seem to be doing more and more and more. At one of our recent vigils back in December, one of my colleagues, David Bonilla, talked about how it seems like people who've kind of made it through the dangers of the desert and have been living in the United States now for years, now they're being persecuted within the United States. And now we see not only is it folks who are living without documentation, but also people who are trying to accompany them and be in solidarity with them that also are being persecuted and even killed. So I'd like us to take just a moment, if you will. I'd like to say the name Juan Diego Trejo. I'd like us to say presente, calling in the presence his memory, but also to call in the presence of our space this morning, Renee Good and Alex Preddy. So I'll say the liturgy that we have for the vigil, and after I say the name the second time, if you would join me saying presente, and we'll do it that way. So Juan Diego Trejo was a 16-year-old boy, a son. He was a brother. He was created in divine image and beloved by God. Juan Diego Trejo, presente. Renee Good was a mother, was a wife, was created in the divine image and beloved by God. Renee Good, presente. Alex Preddy was a VA nurse. He was created in the divine image and beloved by God. Alex Preddy, presente. We recognize in the midst of all of the suffering, Jesus is present. Jesucristo, presente. Jesucristo, presente. Jesucristo, presente. Jesucristo, presente. So we pray, and we pray, once again, we pray for those who are suffering, we pray for our governments that we might find a better way, and pray for ourselves that we might have wisdom and courage to be part of solutions for the welfare of our communities. So the second way we respond in the realities of migration is through education. We receive churches and delegations, churches and seminaries and high schools and universities to come and share life and ministry with us, to be a part of this community, to eat together, to pray together, to walk together, to play together, to laugh together, to cry together, and to learn how we're connected across borders. Several years ago, we had some of the youth from First Pres Ann Arbor, together with Mark Mattis, came. It was a delight to have them with us present as part of that, and to be a witness to God calls us to be as one body that is joined together in Christ. So education is key to us. We do also immigration and church response workshops in different places throughout the U.S. and Mexico. And other ways that we work on doing education. So prayer, education, humanitarian response. One of the things that if someone's on the side of the road, we're called to be there to help and to be a support, just like the Good Samaritan, to go and do likewise. We've done that over the years through different ways. We have a migrant resource center that's the first non-governmental building you come to when you walk into Mexico. This year, it'll be its 20th anniversary. It was founded in June 30th of 2006. And over those 20 years, this Migrant Resource Center, which is a partnership, and you can see in the window, and that's why I have this particular picture up, it's a partnership with Frontero de Cristo and the CAME, which is a shelter of the Catholic Church. So it's once again, it's cultivating community, communities that, quote, shouldn't be together. In Mexico, the Catholic Church and the Protestant churches don't really work together, but this is something that we're doing a lot of bringing together people who, quote, shouldn't be together. And the Migrant Resource Center is one of those joint efforts that we do to witness to our common call to be Christ followers in this world. Over the last 20 years in this little space, over 200,000 men, women, and children have been welcomed into this space. A safe place for them to think about what's next for them, a place where they can contact their families, a place where they can get food, can get good coffee, a place where they can just be heard, a place where they can get their wounds, basic wounds, first aid taken care of. I remember you talked about the concertina wire, how many people come in with cuts that need to be taken care of, or their feet are in horrible shape because of walking so much in the desert. So this is a place of welcome and mercy and peace for people. If you actually look through the second window, you can actually see a cross that is out here. It's right here. That's been planted. Unfortunately, in the summer of 2021, there was a person, Andres Facundo, who was released by the Border Patrol in very, very bad shape, and he came to the Migrant Resource Center. I was at the center when he arrived. He was in very bad physical condition. We immediately called 911 in Mexico. They came and realized he needed to be hospitalized, and he ended up dying. And so we did plant a cross for Andres in that area there. I want to recognize this woman who's one of the founders of Café Justo. The taller woman is Shirley Jewell, and she's actually standing in the left picture with Doña Zoraida, who's one of the founders of Café Justo, one of the coffee cooperativas that we work with. And she died this past Wednesday on January the 21st at the age of 98. But she was a founding member of Frontero de Cristo and an elder of the Presbyterian Church in Douglas. And so she founded Frontero de Cristo, one of the founding members of Frontero de Cristo, when she was like 57 years old. And over the last couple of weeks, I was able to visit with her a lot. And we were sharing stories, and one of the ones that we remembered was back in 2019, I showed up at her house, and she was always worried about us as a family, concerned about us, asking about us. But this particular day, she noticed I was really down, and she said, "Mark, what's the problem? What's the matter?" And I shared with her that there was a guy named Scott Warren, who was a volunteer with a partner organization of ours called No More Deaths, who had been arrested by the government, and he was put on trial and facing 20 years in prison and $200,000 fine for helping two Honduran men who had gotten lost in the desert. And he provided food and water and shelter for them as they recovered and then thought about what they were going to do next. And so he was arrested and put on trial. Hoka, my colleague Hoka Gallegos, the other coordinator of Frontero de Cristo, we actually were blessed to go and be a part of the trial, witnessing when Scott testified at his trial. It was one of the most powerful spiritual experiences I've ever had in terms of hearing him calmly and just with deep reverence and passion share why he did what he did. And the government wanted him to plead guilty to a lesser charge and basically get probation, and he would not do it. And because he said, we can't do that. And despite the fact he could have gotten 20 years in prison as opposed to probation if he pled guilty. And so at the end of the day, that first trial, there was a hung jury. 10 voted to acquit and 2 voted to convict. And on the day I was visiting Shirley, our government had announced that we were going to retry him. Despite the lopsided hung jury, we were going to spend more time and more resources and more energy to try him. And that I was really disappointed and frustrated that we would do that. That we spend so much time to do that when there's so much other things that we need to do. And then the thing I never ever imagined coming out of Sherry's lips was, I guess they'll just have to arrest me too. And I was like, she was 92 at the time, and I was like, what are you talking about, Shirley? And she started telling me, and she was a lifelong Republican, and she shared all the times that in that living room you see right there, she had opened her doors and welcomed people who were in need, and people who didn't speak Spanish, didn't speak English, people who looked like they had been in not good physical condition. She said, I never asked if they had papers or not. I just saw them as human beings who needed help. And I was like, whoa. I said, living out the faith. And the last time I visited her, I said, well, Shirley, you don't have to worry about getting arrested anymore. She goes, no, don't have to worry about that. I'm in God's hands. And so I just give thanks to God for Shirley and for her witness. So prayer, education, humanitarian response, and then our fourth response is economic. One of the folks who came to the Lily Valley Church, which is the church where our family worships when we're in Agua Prieta, there was when I first got here, every week there'd be people who'd come in to worship battered and bruised, having been expelled from the United States after walking through the desert. And one of those men was a guy named Eduardo Perez Verdugo. And Eduardo Perez Verdugo came in, had been worshiping there for some time, disappeared, and then showed back up, and he was limping and was scraped up. And I asked him, I said, brother, what happened? And he said, and he told me the story that he had gotten invited to go to Phoenix to work on a golf course. Had told the guy, no, I'm not going to go. He got invited a second time. He said no. The third time, the guy said to him, well, how long do you think it's going to take you to get home before working here on the border? Because Eduardo had come up to the border to work in the factories to earn money to send back to rebuild his house after Hurricane Mitch and to rebuild the church building. And so he said, well, I'm thinking it's going to be 5 years. And the guy said, well, how long do you think it'll take you making $10 an hour? And that'll tell you how long ago that was. And $10 an hour in Phoenix. And he said, well, probably a year. So Eduardo decided to cross the border, joined a group, ended up going through mesquite groves and being scraped up, falling down an arroyo, banging his knee. Ended up trying to keep up with the rest of the group because he'd heard about how many people were left behind and died in the desert in the night. And he finally got called by our border patrol, and he was on the ground with his face on the dirt, and he looked up at the agent and said, hey brother, the same blood that runs through your veins runs through my veins. I'm just trying to provide for my family. For saying that, he got kicked in the head and put a boot on his neck and was told to shut up, we don't have anything in common. And he tells this story after worship in the Lily Valley Sanctuary, and I'm don't have any words. And then he said, Hermano Marcos, salir de nuestra tierra es sufrir. Brother Mark, to leave our land is to suffer. And it struck me that he didn't say, not being able to enter your country legally like you can enter my country legally is suffering. He didn't say, entering your country in the middle of the night trying to avoid law enforcement was suffering, or being scraped up by mesquite thorns was suffering, or falling down in the arroyo and banging my knee was suffering, or trying to keep up was suffering, or being treated subhumanly was suffering. He said to leave our land is to suffer. Not that all that other stuff isn't suffering, but for him, the primary thing was leaving his land was suffering. But then he said, but if we could control our coffee, we'd be able to stay on our land. And it was that became a vision that ended up shared with other coffee farmers who were in the congregation about what would it mean if they could control their coffee and not only sell their coffee to whoever who gave the best price, but they themselves could roast their coffee, package their coffee, export their coffee, and be able to pay themselves a sustainable, have a sustainable living, where their children would be able to come back home as well. Two of the founding members of Café Justo who took on that vision are Doña Zoraida and Don Gato. Doña Zoraida died in 2021 at the age of 94. She died with her son Mundo by her side. Mundo was in Atlanta, Georgia, roofing houses when Café Justo started, but was able to come back after a few years of Café Justo being gone and was able to take over the coffee business. In November, I was visiting with Café Justo and I met with Mundo. Mundo took me to visit his daughters, Madeline and Nilda. Both of them finished college. The first finished high school in their family, but also college. And both of them were still living in the community. One is a nurse and working in the city down the mountain from them, and the other is starting a small business in the community. And they too were with their grandmother when she died. She died a good death, and I give thanks to God for that. I also met with Don Gato. Don Gato's 98. He's still alive. He's had hard of hearing and hard of seeing, but he told me he wants to get to Agua Prieta one more time to see the roaster, to remember what God has done, to be able to provide opportunities through their vision of Café Justo. So prayer, economics, humanitarian, and economic response. One of the volunteers, a guy named Walter Danforth, who contacted us as the farmers of Café Justo were having this vision, but had no idea how to enter the market. There was a guy who retired, and his name was Walter Danforth, and he had just retired from a life of sales and marketing. He says, is there anything I can do to help Frontero de Cristo? And I told him about the farmers, and so he and his wife, Mary, who I saw yesterday, they spent 3 years going around the country talking about the vision of Café Justo and what their hopes were to be able to stay on their land and to have their kids be able to come back and raise their families together. And one of the sermons he would do was on the Good Samaritan. And he said, I'll never forget, he says, if we find people on the side of the road, we have to always stop and pick up someone who's on the side of the road and provide help. That's our call. We're called to doing likewise. But then he took it a step further and he said, but you know what? If we keep finding people in the same place on the side of the road, something's the matter with the road and we got to fix the road. And he said the farmers of Café Justo have given a vision of how to fix the road. And they're working at fixing the road. So if we can enter into just economic relationships with those who produce products that we consume, then that's one way of fixing the road. And another one of the Café Justo's partners, members, his name is Adrian Gonzalez, he says, we want to work for the day where people can migrate if they want to, but not because they have to. And so we love that we've been invited to accompany the Café Justo cooperative and the families in trying to realize this vision that they have. And then our fifth area is through advocacy. Frontero de Cristo is part of the Southern Border Communities Coalition. We work to help raise up the voice of our community in Douglas and Agua Prieta, to connect with policymakers and cultivate the relationships with our elected officials, to be able to hear other voices that aren't necessarily the loudest voices. Because too often, one of the things that we would hear, Gabrielle Giffords was our representative. She was who you may have heard of. But one of the things that always frustrated me about her was she would say about immigration, she would say, well, we have to secure the border because my constituents say the border is out of control, and yes, we need immigration reform, but we have to secure the border because my constituents say this. And so we reached out to her, and we would have her come down and do community roundtables in which she could hear not just the voices that were reaching out to her, but that she could hear voices from teachers, voices from healthcare workers, voices from small businesses, voices from faith community, voices from community organizations who are working day to day with the community, but aren't really connected to the elected process in terms of calling and complaining about how bad things are, but rather working day to day. And so for them to hear other voices from the border. And so we've continued that with every representative since, having town halls where people come. This picture down here at the left was the one time we had our representative actually cross the border and hear from people who were waiting to seek asylum. And that was back in 2021. But our goal is to be able to help our elected officials get hear a broader set of voices than just the loudest voices from our community. Not to deny that there are those loud voices, but they're not the voices that really represent the broad sense of who we are as a community. So, anyway, I talked a lot. It's already 11, so I apologize for going over, but those are the 5 ways that we as a ministry are seeking to respond in faith to the realities of migration: through prayer, through education, through humanitarian response, through economic activity, and through advocacy.
Thank you, Mark, for that. Are there any other questions that people might have? Yes.
Thank you, Mark, for your presentation and the faithful work that you're doing for the Lord. I just went to the Cafe Justo website, and it says that they are unable to accept any online orders for right now until further notice. Do you know what's happening with that?
Yes, and that gives me an opportunity to invite you to an event that's happening on Thursday, a Coffee and Conversations, where Cafe Justo is going to share about their 2026 plans, as well as some of the charts. 2025 was a very, very difficult year for a lot of people and a lot of organizations, and it was the hardest year for Cafe Justo that they've had, and they ran out of coffee. Basically, is what the problem was from their the harvest from last year. They ran out before the new harvest came in, so it was a supply issue. And it was one of the reasons they asked me to come and visit in November to think about how to deal with the supply issue for 2026. The good news is that coffee should be leaving from this year's harvest on Monday to be coming up to the border, and orders should be opened up again. So, you know, one of the challenges of their model is that it's a single source. So it's only from that one cooperative. So it's like, so if they run out of coffee, they're not buying coffee from other places. So that was a big challenge that they had in 2026. They ran out of coffee before the new harvest came in for multiple reasons. And Frontero has been reaching out to our partners through our e-letter, sharing updates over the course of the fall, sharing a little bit more about that. And if you'd like, you can look up those e-letters and see some of the more detailed reasons why that's the case. But you can also join on Thursday for Coffee and Conversations and hear from Diane Fuentes, one of the founding members, and who's just now retiring after 23 years, and then Carmina Sanchez, who is working in the 2026 plan.
Mark, could you send me the link for that meeting, as well as your prayer,
Sure.
as well as the prayer meetings that you have virtually, and then I can send them to those who are here.
I sure will. Thank you, Diane.
Thank you.
As you know, Mark, there's an escalation of hate mongering and fear mongering here towards people that are dark-skinned. For those of us who want to be able to deliver accurate information to people who are supportive of these efforts, against the immigrant population, what is the best source of information? Because the administration keeps talking about how these people are all criminals, they deserve to be deported, mistreated, and they deserve what they get. So how can we counter that false narrative?
Yes, well, first of all, it's interesting that their own statistics, if you look at their own statistics, they don't play out the way they present them. And so that's one piece. But there are lots of places where you can and I'll send Diane a list of places where you can get information in terms of the kind of the breakdown. But when they're talking about the criminality, they're lumping in administrative offenses as well as criminal offenses. Being in the country without documentation is an administrative offense, and also so they're linking lots of things. So even the numbers, when they say 70%, I think that's the latest, have criminal backgrounds. Well, what does that mean as a criminal background? Does that mean folks who have a violent crime? Does it mean what does it mean? Well, that includes immigration offenses as well, and so they're lumping those pieces together. And it's important to be able to have those figures there. And so I'll send a place where link to Diane later after it'll probably be tomorrow before, because I'm preaching later today, and I'll probably take the afternoon off. But I'll get the links that you can check that out there. But it's part of it's unfortunately it's something that has begun from 30 years ago, and it's been something that's happened in every administration, and has just been taken to turbo drive on this one, because for a long time, when I first got here, my folks who were migrating got kind of connected with drug smuggling, and then it was kind of saying people who were migrating was to terrorists, and now the criminal intent inside the United States. And so it's a way of trying to create fear, and not to say that there aren't folks who've had criminal backgrounds that are being deported, because there are, but the folks who are mainly getting caught up in all this are not, quote, the worst, or even people who've had violent criminals. They're by and large the majority of folks not having violent criminal convictions with them. So it is important to not allow for that kind of misinformation or incomplete information or deceptive information to go without being counteracted. However, having said that, oftentimes facts don't matter, it seems, in today's world. And so oftentimes, when I'm talking with someone who might be upset about the rhetoric, I'll tell you, I was talking with a Republican mayor of South Carolina last year. I had gone to do an educational piece at Winthrop University and was able to talk with the mayor. And the mayor was someone who was wanting to have a more healthy community relationship with the newer immigrants, and recognize the positive impact of the immigrant population on their community. But he got a lot of pushback because of quote, all the immigrants. And for me, his response was one of the best that I've ever heard. He was at a public forum, and someone said, "What are you going to do about these immigrants who are ruining our country and our town?" And he said, "Well, which immigrants are you talking about? Are you talking about the nurse who's taking care of my mother? Or are you talking about the roofers who are, replacing the roof on my neighbor's house? Or are you talking about the doctor that saw my cousin the other day? Or are you talking about, and he talked about specific ways and peoples, and he invited the community to think about how their lives, every day, they were being cared for by immigrants, or they were having, whether that be through doctors or nurses or folks who were doing landscaping or roofing, and looking at what our connections were directly. I remember this. I was at a church about an hour from here in Sierra Vista, Arizona one time, and the youth group was going to come, and they were going to just interact with the youth from Agua Prieta, but some of the parents got worried about them crossing the border, and they didn't want them to do anything illegal, and they're specifically worried about putting water out in the desert for folks who were migrating. And so I went. The pastors called me and asked if I could go and be interrogated by this group of parents. Talk to this group of parents. And so I go and I'm trying to share all the different ways the youth could be involved with the youth in Agua Prieta without touching directly the issues of immigration. Definitely not going out into the desert, putting out water, because there's lots of ways that we can be in ministry with one another. And finally, this one parent who was a colonel in the Army, and I could tell she was getting more and more agitated. She was sitting closer up on her chair, and she finally just screamed. She said, "Mark, what I want to know is, do you support illegal immigration?" And just shouted. And I wasn't prepared for it. I wasn't prepared for the anger. I wasn't prepared for that question itself. But it was one of those moments that I really believe it was a spirit moment, because I said calmly, I didn't react angrily or defensively. I said, "Colonel," I said, "I don't want to support illegal immigration, but I'm afraid I support illegal immigration every day. Every day that I eat oranges that were harvested in the United States, I'm supporting illegal immigration. And every day that I go to a restaurant where they're serving meat that's been packed in the United States, I'm probably supporting illegal immigration. And if I'm traveling and I stay at a hotel, the likelihood is I'm probably supporting illegal immigration. And if I go and if I were to play golf, I'm probably supporting illegal immigration." And this was the thing I knew, that their sanctuary had just been built, and it had been built by people who were in the country without documentation. And so if I go into a building that's been built in the last 10 years, I'm probably supporting illegal immigration. "Colonel, do you support illegal immigration?" And the question for me and for our ministry has been, we too often think about how it's other people's problem instead of looking at how we participate in a broken system, and how we're complicit in this system. The question then becomes, how do we respond to our complicity? We do that through those 5 ways that I tried to put out: through prayer, through education, through humanitarian response, through advocacy, through economics. Some folks, and Colonel included, might respond in a different way. But we have to recognize our own complicity. And I think that's the hard piece of helping everyone think about not just looking at the log in your brother or sister's eye, but how do we, the speck in your brother or sister's eye, but how do we look at the log in our own eye? And so I think that's the challenge for the church.
Thank you, Mark. Can we see if there's one more question, and then is there anybody else who has a question? Thank you so much. I'm sorry.
Mark, it's Dave Hires. It's good to see you, my friend. It's been 30 years.
Hey!
So I wanted to say, Mark, thank you for being with us today. Thank you for your ministry that has had so many spirit-filled moments. And I'm not sure what I think about the goatee, but I know what I think about your ministry, and I give great thanks for it.
And Dave, I'm not sure what I think about your new hairdo either.
It's praying for you, Mark. That's what it is.
The goatee's not gonna be here long. Don't worry. It's my father-in-law. My father-in-law, my in-laws family doesn't really grow facial hair very well, and my family doesn't either. But at Christmas, my father-in-law had this little goatee, and I said something to my mother-in-law, and I said, "Well, it looks like he's challenging me to do something," and she just kind of rolled her eyes, and so I've been on this little kick since Christmas, but it's probably coming off this week.
Mark, much love to you. We really do appreciate you.
Yes, thank you very much. Look forward to communication.
Thank you very much.
All right, be safe out there.
Yeah.
You
too. Keep warm.
Be safe and be courageous.